Good afternoon. Really excited about getting our season started against the New York Jets. Before I get into those guys, I'll give you a quick injury update. Thankfully, as we sit here today, and really just based on the structure of the preseason and how it's set up, it's done so that we all get an opportunity to kind of move into the season as healthy as possible. Um, Not having a game last week, obviously, last weekend helps that. Um, Derek Harmon is the only guy at this juncture that I would characterize as out. I would characterize Herbig as questionable. He had a really good day yesterday, and so we'll leave the door ajar for him and see where work leads us during the course of the week. Certainly, his participation and the quality of his participation will be the key variables in terms of our decision making, whether or not we choose to use him or not. Other than those two instances, man, we're largely a healthy group. Certainly had some bumps and bruises associated with preseason work, and some people have been non-participants in games. Some of it due to injury, some of it due to precaution. Some of those guys have been working their way back. Alex Highsmith, for example, and others. But we don't anticipate any of those guys' availability being in any way questionable. You can include Calvin Austin, for example, in that discussion. And so we got a relatively healthy group, excited about that. We had some really good quality work yesterday, getting the weekend off of us, working on some football conditioning, some base football things that are us, some things that are base New York. And so with that, I'll get into talking about New York. Certainly there's some challenges in week one. We expect schematic personality, division of labor, agenda, if you will. I think it gets magnified sometimes when you have a new staff, and particularly a new staff with first-time coordinators, like on the offensive side of the ball for them. But to be quite honest with you, if you've been in this business any length of time, it's almost kind of commonplace with this time of year. We were very much in the same circumstance 12 months ago, leaning in on week one. We were getting ready to play the Falcons. They had a new staff, a first-time offensive play caller, and so we had to do some speculating there. And so it certainly is a challenge, but not one that's unfamiliar with this time of year. There's enough, obviously, for us to work on, and the component of week one football is not necessarily about who you play, but how you play, the quality of our play, the cleanliness, the technical expertise, the minimizing of penalties and things of that nature oftentimes determine quality performance in week one. And so make no mistake, we got a lot of respect for the challenges of preparing for and then ultimately playing the Jets. But like most people in week one, our focus is the quality of our work, the quality of our play, our division of labor, our ability to display situational knowledge and execute and make quality plays within them circumstances, etc. That being said, I'll start talking about the Jet offense. Man, you got to start first with their running game. Man, they got a deep and talented backfield led by Hall and Allen. If you look at the history of their staff, those two kind of represent maybe what Gibbs and Montgomery represented to the Detroit Lions. And so we've been looking at it through that lens. Make no mistake, they're both very capable. Allen really burst onto the scene, I thought, a year ago as a rookie out of Wisconsin. He's got a downhill run demeanor and style. The pile always seems to fall in the direction that he desires it to. Breece Hall is multi-talented. He can run inside. He can run outside. He had a lot of explosion plays a year ago on the perimeter. He's good out of the backfield in the passing game, check downs, but beyond check downs in one-on-one matchups and so forth, aligned outside of the backfield. He's displayed that skill set. And so we certainly got to be ready for that component of play. He broke a check down for 57 or so yards on us last year that really kind of changed the complexion of that game early on when we had already had an anticipation of his talents in that area, and he was still able to deliver. And so their running backs and their commitment to the running game, I think Coach Glenn has been very transparent about their desire to run the football and their commitment to doing so. And so that has our attention as we prepare You can't talk about the run game without talking about Justin's physical abilities in that area and the challenges that it may present to us. Certainly, he didn't do a lot of running by design and so forth in the preseason, but it's reasonable to expect there to be some design running game. He had it in Chicago. He had it with us. I think if you got a guy with his type of talents, it's somewhat common sense to have some design run game for the quarterback position to make people play 11-on-11 football. And so certainly his unique running abilities and skills in that area has our attention, whether it's design runs or ad lib, if you will. You can't talk about the run game without including his unique talents in that area. In the passing game, certainly Garrett Wilson is a talented and emerging player, one that has an extended relationship with Justin going back to college. And so we have respect for not only his talents, but their relationship that extends beyond the current team development. I would imagine that a lot of the passing offense and so forth is going to go through him. I've heard a lot of quality reports about Mason Taylor, a guy at the tight end position I think they took in the second round. He was highly regarded in the draft as a capable vertical threat, a major component probably to any passing game, and certainly have heard really good things about his development in this team development process. And so we got to be cognizant of what he's capable of for sure. But they got a collection of other guys, Lazard and others, man, that have been around, Reynolds, who got NFL experience and certainly, are to be respected in terms of the schematic component of playing matchup football and minimizing that component of play for them. They are in their venue, and so, we got some things to manage in terms of that, their ability to communicate at the line of scrimmage and make checks and us being in position to do similar things if they get into some check football. Venue is a component this time of year, and certainly they'll have that at their disposal if they want to get in and out of stuff at the line. And so even though it's week one, we better carry enough schematics to match that potential strategy from a defensive perspective. Looking at the Jets defense, first of all, Steve Wilkes has been around a long time. I've competed him against him a lot. Arthur Smith has competed against him a lot. When he was in Carolina, Arthur was in Atlanta, for example, and think in 2022. But Steve has been in the North. He was in Cleveland, I think, in 19. He has a mode of operation, one that is highly respected. He's an experienced guy. He's going to be aggressive and fundamentally sound. He'll do a nice job of utilizing the players' individual talents and putting them in position to win and being multiple. But taking a step back from all of that, just looking at their people, man, they've invested a lot in their men up front. Certainly, Quentin Williams is a top-tier talent on the inside, former first-rounder. But you can say that also about their edge people. Will McDonald was a highly regarded first-rounder. Jermaine Johnson was a highly regarded first-rounder. And so you've seen the draft investment from an organization's perspective in terms of producing a quality front. More recently, they've added Big Harrison in team development via a trade from Minnesota. And so you see that they've made a commitment to providing a quality level of talent up front that others play behind. Think a great deal about their linebacker tandem, Sherwood and Williams, man. They're talented, an emerging homegrown group, if you will, particularly as it pertains to Sherwood, man. He's grown up. I think he's a former fifth-round pick that's kind of evolved over his time in New York and been rewarded for that evolution with a big contract. And that linebacker tandem, that second-level linebacker tandem, man, has played a lot of ball together. They both were highly productive a year ago. I'd imagine that to continue to grow and prosper. In the secondary, obviously, Sauce Gardner is a top-flight bump corner, a first-round acquisition, a top draft pick, if you will. They've acquired Stevens, who obviously we're familiar with from his time in Baltimore, to play opposite of him. And so they got a quality veteran corner tandem. They got Cisco, who's new at safety. And so they got some top quality talent at all three levels. They got a coordinator and Steve Wilkes that's been doing it a long time and at a high level, and couple that with the fact that obviously Coach Glenn has a defensive background, and I'm certain that he'll have some involvement and create some speculation issues for us, particularly in week one. As I mentioned at the beginning, there's some speculation associated with this time of year, and the things that he might bring to what they do defensively is something that is a topic of discussion. And so we got a lot to talk about. We have some planning of our own. We got some physical work ahead to ready our guys and to further divide our labor up, particularly situationally. And so we got a bunch of decisions to make, but such is life this time of year, particularly on a Tuesday. But we love all of that. It's awesome to be here. It's awesome to get this regular season started. And with that, I'll pause and open it up for questions.
Mike, are you expecting Cam to play, and because of how limited he made himself in the preseason, is he ready to play?
I'm certainly expecting Cam to play. Cam doesn't play a lot in team development over the last several years. My job is to get him in and out of Latrobe, and I've done my job. And so there are no reservations about his participation or his readiness. I'm sure he's chopping at the bit.
Mike, without Harmon, when you go at base, who's going to take his place?
You know, it's going to be a committee of people, but I would imagine it would have been a committee of people if he were available. We generally play a lot of D linemen, particularly early in the season, due to lack of conditioning and potential heat and so forth. And so not only us, but I just think globally speaking, this time of year, most teams play a lot of bigs up front defensively so that fatigue doesn't become a factor, particularly down the stretch in the football game.
Mike, you guys, Justin Fields and Breece Hall, two talented runners. You guys, other teams had success with like the QB option run a lot last year against you guys. What do you guys need to do better so that if the Jets do bring that out, that you guys are better equipped this time?
You know, I don't tote last year's bags. That's just an agenda that needs to be addressed this year in 2025. Quarterback mobility and the design run game component is a component of today's game. We've done things at a lot of levels to further strengthen ourselves. The acquisition of Derek Harmon and Y.A. Black being two components of it, but others. And we certainly have some schematic things up our sleeve that I won't disclose in this setting. But I just think that each and every year, particularly in today's game, the way it's trending, quarterback mobility, the design run game, the situational design run game associated with it is something that, 31 other defenses better be ready to address and planning for as well.
Mike, what's unique about the way Fields does it compared to others?
Compared to who? He's unique because he is who he is. He's stronger than most mobile quarterbacks. That's a component of his game that I think is unique. He's a really talented guy physically. He's not easy to bring down. He's got a real solid base about him. He's big. And so, when I think about what might be different, I think about his unique physical skill set. But in terms of schematics, I don't know that, the things that they do are going to be uniquely different from others. I think there's some global things that people do in that area.
Is it any different preparing and game planning for a guy that started games for you last season?
Not really, to be quite honest with you. I just think it's a lot of that in today's game. People move around. I'd imagine, they're pondering similar things on the other side, and so from that perspective, it'll be fair.
Mike, you're going into the season relatively healthy. Only two guys that you've mentioned today, but a lot of these starters not playing in the preseason. How challenging is it? Obviously you have them healthy, but how challenging is it for them to go into the season ready to go without having lack of support?
It's not challenging. I base my decisions basically off of shared experiences in a lot of ways. Cam, for example, he and I have been together a lot of years. He's logged a bunch of snaps, and so his runway required to take off is short relative to others. TJ had that big game in the opener, I think, in 21 in Buffalo when he had a holdout and he had 2 sacks, sack fumble, and things of that nature. And so you go through things with people and you learn what they can manage in terms of readiness. And so, my job is to be fair to everyone, not treat everyone the same. And that's why the schedule of work is different for different people in team development, so that your question is somewhat mute. Based on my shared experiences, I have a great deal of comfort and the prescribed plan for each individual guy, whether they participated or didn't in game in the team development process.
Mike, you guys announced your captains for the season yesterday. What does it say about Aaron Rodgers and the way that he's acclimated and started to lead this team, that he was the one selected for the offense?
You know, I don't think anybody's surprised by that, not only because of his resume and experience, but what he's displayed since he's been here in terms of being a great team guy and communicating and leading and sharing his experience and the lens through which he sees the game with others. It's just been a good process, and so I don't think that was earth-shattering in any way within our collective.
You mentioned the speculation you have this time of year. In your experience, how quickly does that speculation go away, especially haven't seen some of the starters?
Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes you play, you know, not only week 1, but in some instances week 2 and week 3. I think really until people get a big enough body of work on tape where you can see some things, trends, if you will, and have a large enough sample size that you can speak with great certainty, speculation is going to exist. Speculation, in a lot of ways, exists through September.
Because of that and the new guys you have, because of that and the new guys, all you've brought in, do you have a good handle in your mind what you have to put out there against the Jets?
I do.
It looks like Calvin Austin is filling that wide receiver 2 role. Just how confident are you in him and his?
I'm extremely confident in him, but I'm also equally confident in Roman Wilson and, you know, and Jonnu and Freiermuth. I think, you know, there's a lot of speculations and narratives about the quote-unquote number 2, and I just think in today's game it comes at you in a lot of ways. We certainly have unique depth and talent at the tight end position, and particularly in reference to new acquisitions. Jonnu is somewhat of a positionless player. Calvin is growing and has grown and made big strides a year ago. We've been really excited about Roman Wilson in team development, and so I'm less concerned about quote-unquote who occupies the number 2 position. It could be a variety of people depending on the circumstance. One thing is for certain, a talent like DK, you know, dictates a lot of schematics. And so his presence is going to provide opportunities for others, whether it's Calvin, Roman, Jonnu, Freiermuth. It's not a big issue for me or for us.
The absence of preseason game reps, not having a lot of those, especially for the new components that you brought in, the team building aspect that you had starting in March through the draft and the trades you made in summertime. Do you have a sense that the vision of what that roster, what those X's and O's schematics are supposed to look like can come together?
For us?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm completely comfortable. We do a lot of work not only in stadium, in team development. I'm comfortable with what I've seen and how we've divided the labor up in our plans in that area, certainly.
Challenges that you've had to face each of the last 5 seasons, bringing in a new quarterback to start the season with a different guy?
You know, I don't know that I've wasted any time looking at it from that perspective. I just, you know, I got there's challenges that come with my role each and every year, and I get hyper-focused on those challenges, and I don't know that I compare it to a larger discussion, if you will. There's certainly challenges when you got new people at that position, being on the same page, supporting and developing leadership, depending on, you know, where you are with it. You know, you support a guy with Aaron's experience from a leadership perspective. You develop leadership with a guy like Will Howard, for example. And so I'm more focused on those things as I am the larger discussion that has been 4 or 5 years of it. I hadn't looked at it through that lens.
Did it help when you had, to your point, you had a veteran like Russell and then Aaron when you bring in them in?
Again, I hadn't looked at it from that perspective.
Understanding that it's week 1, what are you expecting to see from your offense this week?
You know, I'd like to see a lot of points and a W, you know, sincerely. But what produces that? Minimizing negative plays, minimizing self-inflicted wounds, penalties, things that get you off schedule, winning possession down football. I'm sure I'm looking for the same thing that 31 other head coaches are looking for in week 1 from their offensive units.
Jaylen Warren yesterday signed a contract extension. What stands out about the way that he's worked to go from a UDFA to now running back 1, and how do you imagine you'll divide the labor within that room?
You know, his progress, I think, has been very evident, and he's to be congratulated. that guy has gone from an undrafted, as you mentioned, to getting second contract business, and certainly he's been deserving of that. Certainly he'll be our featured runner, but we're not opposed, obviously, to utilizing Kenny G and Caleb, and I'm sure you'll see them at what time and to what degree will be determined how the game unfolds, and probably be somewhat determined week to week based on a myriad of variables. But certainly proud and happy for Jaylen and excited that we're going to do extended business with him.
Mike, do you have a sense for what this game means for Aaron to start out going back into MetLife and playing his old team?
You know, I don't because he's just been doing it so long. I'm sure he's capable of compartmentalizing that. If it means anything to him more than a normal game, he probably wouldn't tell you. And so, you know, we're going to go play football.
Mike, give us a scouting report on his physical prowess.
Aaron's?
Nobody's seen him in the public yet.
You know, his arm talent is unbelievable, not only in terms of arm strength and accuracy, but his ability to release the ball from a variety of places. You know, his game management expertise and experience is very evident. His line of scrimmage play, weaponizing of cadences, et cetera. His above-the-net game is very unique. It's been a good process. But the proof is in the pudding. I'm sure he's excited about getting into a stadium with us and quarterbacking for us, and I know I'm excited about seeing it.
How do you measure progress for that group in the preseason when they're not on the field together against another team in a game situation?
You don't.
Well, where does the confidence that they're going to be able to sort of hit the ground running, where does that
I'm generally a confident person anyway, and I see them work every day, and that daily work leads to in-stadium performance. Do I have confidence about what they're capable of in stadium? I'd be making it up. None of us have seen our guys in stadium, and so I just think that that's something that we all manage this time of year. And so I might not be answering your question there, but that's just the realities of this business. I think there's some speculation and some not knowing this time of year. You can hide under your desk or you can be confident. I choose to, you know, base my posture on what I've seen from a prep standpoint, and I've been really comfortable with what I've seen.
You faced a new coaching staff in the opener. Can you look at the lines last year, the preseason, and think you are pretty confident about the way they're going to look schematically, or do you have to assume some curveballs are coming and be led on your feet?
I think it's appropriate to assume that there's some unforeseen things, certainly.
What is the specific challenge of preparing that way composed the way you normally would construct a regular season?
To be honest with you, it's not overly unique. That was the point I was making in the opening. It occurs quite a bit this time of year. There are new staffs every year. They play somebody week one. It just happens to be us. There are several new staffs this year. It just so happens that we've seen it 2 years in a row. But if you've been in this business any period of time, it's a component of week one football.
I spoke about Cam's
pretty brand new secondary. How set are you on the way those players will rotate, or how much will that kind of work itself out throughout the first couple games?
Pretty set.
Cam's state of readiness physically, from a mental standpoint, is he locked in and have everything else compartmentalized, to use that word?
I'll let him speak for himself in that regard.
Cam's played about 800 snaps last year. If possible, would you like to pull back on some of those, knowing that he's 36 now?
I think sometimes when you're sitting in comfortable seats and you're undefeated and it's week 0, you can talk about some of those things. But sometimes participation is dictated by necessity. You know, who else is available and so forth. And that's just the reality of this business. I've been in it long enough to see it with those sober eyes. Sometimes it might not have anything to do with Cam. It's about others. Derek Harmon's lack of availability, for example, if that was extended, that oftentimes would bleed over into Cam's participation or increased participation. That's the reality, you know, kind of this business. And when you talk about dividing the labor up, none of these things happen in a vacuum. Sometimes it's what's going on around people that dictates their amount of participation, whether it's increased or decreased.
In the end, Mike, how hard was it to walk away from the idea of Justin Fields as the quarterback this year?
You know, it's free agency. It was not only our decision, it was his decision. And so it was mutual. There's a lot of moving parts in free agency. And so I wouldn't present it in the manner in which you asked it.
Anyone else? All right.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Mike.